let me bands. I'ma just sit here and do my dance.
What's good, everybody? What's good? It's your boy, Cardinal Buds Crawford. What's good, man? We back for another one. I hope everybody had a wonderful day, because we are back for another one. Alright, y'all, so today's topic, let's get to it, man. Today's topic is Hype Train. Terence Crawford will hold out on signing Errol Spence Jr. super fight until 2023. Pow! Shots fired. Alright, y'all, what do I mean by Hype Train? What do I mean by Hype Train? And why do I believe Terence Crawford is holding out until 2023? Alright, y'all, so a lot, this fight has been hyped up for, years now. A few years, maybe not as long as the Maypac fight, but this fight has been hyped up for a while now. I can remember back when they were talking about Manny Pacquiao fighting Terence Bud Crawford, and Terence Crawford hadn't even made it up to 147 yet. And the reason they actually never signed that fight, and the reason that Terence Crawford turned it down a few times, was that he wanted to fight Pacquiao at 140 and not 147 because he was afraid of the punching power. Bob Arum, matchmakers, knew that the punching power could be a problem for Crawford. There have been people saying for years now that Terence Crawford's chin's never been tested. And now you have a Terence Crawford that's in the 147-pound division. He's never faced stiff competition or competition at its best. He's faced lackluster competition, to put it easily or put it lightly. And, at this point, I feel like the hype train of Crawford has been probably the biggest hype job in the sport of boxing up until this point in someone's career. I felt like Lomachenko was overblown. But I think Lomachenko has real talent. Don't get me wrong, I'm not dissing Lomachenko. I do think Lomachenko has real talent, but I think the hype of Lomachenko was bigger than Lomachenko's actual talent. And then when he got placed in the ring with a bigger, stronger fighter, the hype went away, and you only had the skill sets that he possessed to try to win him the fight, and he ultimately lost. Now, Teofimo Lopez, probably the biggest hype job next to Terence Crawford. His hype train was humongous. And then he got put in the ring with a basic nobody, and the nobody beat the crap out of him. So sometimes the hype can be bigger than the actual fighter is. And I feel like up until this point, that's Terence Crawford. His hype train has been so magnificent and so larger than life. I don't feel like there's any way that he can live up to his hype train at 147, especially when he faces off with a fighter to the caliber of Errol Spence Jr. Now, I've never been, I'm not the biggest Errol Spence, fan in the world. Not really even a fan at all. I only really started following Errol Spence because he was supposed to be fighting Pacquiao. And kind of like the same thing with Terence Crawford. I only picked these guys up on the radar because they were supposed to be fighting Pacquiao. And, for both of them, I would say they slammed their way out of the fight. Terence Crawford basically used the fact that he didn't want to fight him at 147 as a reason not to fight him. And Errol Spence used his eye injury as a reason to get out of the fight. So I think both guys kind of, avoided that fight, and everybody's going to have their own feelings about that. But let's use an easier word than ducking. Let's use avoided the fight. And, you know, I would say rightfully so if you watch the Keith Thurman fight. And some people will say, well, look what Ugas did. But it is what it is. But now, you know, I think the hype train for Terence Crawford has finally run out of gas. Not even his fans can hype him up at this point because, you know, the truth has been exposed. And for the past 3 weeks, basically the truth has been out there that there's been a contract offered to him. Obviously, there's money problems with the contract that Terence Crawford doesn't want to sign off on. There might be venue problems with the contract, but I think the number one thing for and the number one holdup for Terence Crawford is the money. And to me, if it's the money, that lets me know you're preparing for something. Because if you're trying to get the biggest payday of your career, to me, I feel like that means you're preparing to lose. Because if for any other reason, and I think there are many other fighters who would take this fight on principle. And I think there are many other fighters who would just take the fight because they know what they're going to get on the back end. It has nothing to do with trying to get the biggest payday of your career. Because if you actually were to win that fight, you're going to get some of the biggest paydays. Not just a big payday, but you're going to get some big paydays once you win that fight and get all those title belts from Errol Spence. So I'm starting to feel like he's not confident in himself enough to pursue the fight and sign the contract. So he's now trying to stall it out until he gets the exact dollar amount that he wants, because he knows he can't beat Errol Spence Jr. I think in his heart of heart, he's now starting to realize that Spence Jr. is just too big. He's just too strong. He's actually pretty quick for what he is. He's not a quick, you know, he's not a Pacquiao speed type of fighter, but he's pretty quick for what he does. And I don't think Terence Crawford, even though he's a switch hitter, even though he has a little bit of speed, I don't think he possesses the power to beat an Errol Spence Jr. And I don't think his chin is strong enough to hold up for 12 rounds with Errol Spence Jr. I think it could very easily be a short night when they finally do match up, if they finally do match up. I think they will. I just don't think it'll happen in 22. I think Terence Crawford is going to hold out as long as he can. Maybe till November. Maybe he makes it to November of 2022. Some people are saying November. You know, it's funny. The more people say that this fight is signed, the further they keep pushing out the fight date. At first it was October, and then now it's November, and next it'll be December. Because nobody wants to believe what I'm saying, that this man is just holding out until 2023, because what's on the table is Boots Ennis is the IBF #1 contender. What I was telling y'all a couple videos ago, that there's some big names that are mandatories for Errol Spence Jr. And I think Terence Crawford is hoping he doesn't have to face up with Errol first, that one of these young lions gets an opportunity to get in the ring with him and soften him up. Maybe not beat him, but soften him up enough to where Terence Crawford can feel a little bit more confident in himself that he can actually win that fight. And if he can't get Errol Spence trapped into a mandatory situation, he'll just hold out until he gets the dollar amount that he wants, until he gets the perfect amount of money to lose for. So he wants a set amount of money to lose that fight. And I think he knows there's no way he can win that fight. And the only way for him to have a chance is to either get one of the young guns to soften him up, or to hold out until he gets the amount of money he actually wants. Now, is there any chance in my mind that Terence Crawford can beat Errol Spence, that would only, I would say yes if he would have signed that contract by now. I would say, okay, this guy has confidence in himself. He's not worried about the money. He understands that the money follows the titles. The titles don't follow the money. You have to go get the titles to actually get the money. And you didn't pursue certain fights when you should have pursued them to even the purse split up. So now you're in a situation where you have to do some real slimy tactics to keep your hype train going, to keep your fans believing in you, because in all actuality, I don't think he even believes he can win, like I said before this fight. And in all actuality, if you are going to lose and you are preparing yourself to lose, well, you might as well get the most amount of money that you possibly can for losing that fight. Because after that fight, after Spence does beat Terence Crawford and get that final belt, you're going to see the hype train crash so hard. I think you're going to see a lot of delusional Terence Crawford fans. A lot of his fans are going to say he got robbed, because a lot of people saying it's going to happen in Vegas. I don't think it's going to happen in Vegas. Now, there's a possibility it could. Maybe Terence Crawford said, well, I'll bend on the price if you give me Vegas instead of Texas. I don't want to fight you in Texas, so give me Vegas, and I'll bend on the price a little bit. I won't haggle over the price of the purse as much. But I doubt that it doesn't happen in Texas, because I feel like they really need as much revenue off of this fight as they possibly can put together. So the best place to do it would be Texas, because what's bigger than them football stadiums down in Texas? So, I think there's going to be a lot of delusional Crawford fans once it's all said and done. A portion of his fan base is going to turn on him. A portion of his fan base is going to become delusional and say he got robbed because it happened in Texas. A portion of the fan base is going to say that Errol Spence cheated in some way. They're going to probably say he's on steroids. They're going to say the PBC set Terence Crawford up. It's going to be a lot of delusional hype trained fans after this fight is finally said and done, after Terence Crawford finally does go down to Errol Spence, and after people are proven to be wrong about the hype train that was Terence Crawford. There's no way a fighter can be that good and refuse for this long to sign a contract based off a few extra percentage points of a purse. Because in all actuality, if you're a boxing enthusiast, if you know anything about the sport of boxing and how purses work, the champions always get the pick of the litter. The champions always have gotten more money than the challenger. And if you're a 3-time champion, there's no way in AHAT double hockey sticks the challenger is going to get more money than you. Just look at the Floyd Mayweather situation. I believe Floyd got paid almost twice what Pacquiao got paid for that fight. And Pacquiao is umpteen times more popular and more famous than Floyd. But Floyd was the A side or whatever, and Floyd got the majority of the money, and he wasn't even a unified champion. So in no way in my mind do I think that Terence Crawford is going to get the money he wants. In no way in my mind do I think he's going to win that fight. And in no way in my mind do I think he deserved to be hyped up as much as he was hyped up as a welterweight. Maybe at 140, but not as a welterweight. Y'all let me know what y'all think about that down in the comment section below. Cardinal Red on all social media platforms. Cardinal Bud Crawford, if you're a real one, or if you're nasty. Holler at me on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. You're more than likely to get a response on your comment than the other two, because it'd just be too much. It's too much trying to handle all 3 of those comment sections when the comments come in. So I get to the other 2 when I can, but I normally don't even respond on there. So it is what it is. It's your boy Cardinal Red, and we are.
I'm really outside. Why?